If you could tell men one thing that would help them thrive in a relationship with a woman, what would that one thing be?
You're always at risk of being seen as not masculine because you might cry that could be seen by others as feminine, then you're no longer masculine.
Do you think that's a cultural influence?
Because I've been changing my kids' dirty diapers on nasty bathroom sinks for years because nobody thought that a man would ever change a damn diaper.
What do you think men most struggle with when it comes to maintaining a relationship?
And that sounds crazy, right? Because you're a man, I'm a man, and we're like, I am nothing like a woman. But you were when you were 6 months old.
We are back for another episode. Thanks to our growing family of subscribers. All of you, we appreciate your support, and you can always see the latest over at mikecpodcast.com. We drop new episodes weekly. And our guest today is a returning guest. He's an award-winning author, speaker, teacher, and consultant. His work in the last decade has focused on developing a new understanding of the internal lives of men and helping men and women gain new understanding in relationships. He talks about this in his book, Hidden in Plain Sight. He's also a contributor to Psychology Today. We are pleased to welcome back to the podcast Dr. Avrum Weiss. Avrum, thanks so much for being here.
Pleasure to be here. Good to see you. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Last time you were here, I think it was about a year ago, and I know we were talking off camera. You gave us some really good insights into how men approach relationships with women and the mental aspects of it, all those dynamics. And today I wanted to dive a little deeper into this same discussion. We talked about the fact that many men fear women, they fear rejection, and they often feel intimidated by women. And basically, because of how they are raised, they often bury these emotions and fears and suffer in silence instead of addressing them and dealing with them head on. Men, by their nature, place a lot of burdens upon themselves in relationships. And you've counseled many men in your career.
1 second.
Yeah, of course.
I don't think it's by their nature. I think that's taught.
Okay.
It's an important distinction.
Okay. No, I appreciate that.
And if we think it's our nature, what are you going to do about that? So I think it's a more hopeful framework to understand that it's not natural, it's taught.
Okay, and I think you touched on that last time, and I always kind of default to this instinctual aspect of what I think makes up the nature of a man. And maybe I'm just off base or just subscribe to a different philosophy, but it's interesting.
So much science on this question. And what's fascinating to me is it doesn't matter how much science we generate, people still have the same ideas. But science is overwhelmingly clear that the vast majority of differences between men and women are learned, that the actual biological differences, biologically created psychological differences are minimal. That's hard. I mean, that sounds crazy, right? Because you're a man, I'm a man, and we're like, I am nothing like a woman. But you were when you were 6 months old.
Interesting. I mean, I can't remember, but I'll take your word for it.
Well, I have 2 6-year-old grandchildren, twin boys, and their parents are, very modern. So the kids have dress up area, and it has fireman outfits, but it has dresses too. And the kids, there's no guidance, or they could just do. And when I visit them, some days they're dressed in traditionally masculine outfits, and they don't even like. It's not a difference that registers with them.
Yeah.
They're not socialized yet to think they should or shouldn't wear one thing or another. We will teach them that. We will shame them into being embarrassed about but not yet.
Really? So when you see a kid acting in certain behaviors, like little girls do different things than little boys, right? So boys are often more, I know there's exceptions to this, but I mean, you touched on this, and so I think it's interesting, and I want to pick your brain on this. Boys tend to be rambunctious. There are certain patterns of behavior that we see in younger boys that are different from younger girls. So are you telling me that anything that they do that fits that trait is more learned and that's not instinctual?
Yes, but here is another way of talking about it, which I think is more helpful. Doesn't really matter. What matters is that if you're a boy and you're not feeling rambunctious today and you want to do something, not that shouldn't be shamed. It doesn't matter whether you're more rambunctious than your sister. What matters is that we make room for all aspects of who you are, and that you may be more rambunctious with your sister, but you might like to have a quiet day with a book too.
That's interesting. Well, thanks for pointing that out. I appreciate that. You've done a lot more of this research than I have, so I'm happy to pick your brain on this stuff. And what I wanted to discuss today, just switching gears a little bit, is you've counseled many men in your career. You've shared some stories the last time you were here, and I think they were helpful and helped us gain some insights into the extensive research that you've done. If you could tell men one thing that would help them thrive in a relationship with a woman, what would that one thing be?
Love that question, first of all. I'm going to start a little further back because something occurs to me, and then I promise
Sure.
I'll come to your question. We should at least recognize the fact that we're sitting here talking about men. That's a new idea. Our culture is changing, and we are finally beginning to take men. Now, I understand men are in a position of privilege, but we really have not been very interested in what makes men tick. And so I just want to appreciate the fact that you're asking these questions and that there's an audience of people interested, because little boys growing up today have that
Mhm.
advantage of people being interested in what makes them tick. Nobody was interested in what made me tick. They want to know if I was getting good grades in
Yeah.
school,
Me
period,
too.
100%. Right,
Yeah.
right. So to your question, it's a great question. And I think what I would say is take a deep breath, slow down, and listen. Try listening twice as much as you talk for the next hour and see how you like it.
So you think men just jump the gun and they don't take time to think? Is that one of our biggest problems, you think, in approaching relationships?
It is, but it's coming from
Mhm.
fear. It's coming from insecurity and anxiety. So men are jumping the gun not because they're impatient, but because they, as you said, they feel pressure to perform. So for most men, so for example, here's a very, very simple trick that I suggest to men. The next time you're in a conversation with a woman, particularly if it's an intimate partner, and she starts talking, the first thing I want you to say is, just 1 minute, is this one of those conversations where you just want me to listen, or is this one of those conversations where you want me to help solve a problem? Because men assume that they're being asked to
Mhm.
fix something. And we're wrong more often than we're right. And I'm a therapist, so I should have a higher percentage of guessing than most people, and I'm wrong more than half the time. So you're wrong way more than half the time. And it's so simple, and it lets you completely off the hook. If the answer is, I just need you to listen, then you don't have to figure out how to solve anything. And if the answer is, I want your help to fix something, you're like, okay, I'm deputized. I've been asked to do this.
So where do you think that comes from?
So it comes from the culture, the culturization, the socialization of men that we are. There's a lot of interesting research that if you talk to young women, they identify as female without insecurity. They're not unsure about it. They don't feel like they have to do something to
Mhm.
be female. They just are. But if you talk to young men, they feel always insecure about it and uncertain. Like, I have to do all of these things to maintain my status as a man, and it's always subject to revocation. If I appear feminine in any way, and if you don't believe that, watch a group of boys. When one of them does something that they think seems feminine, they will
Mhm.
attack him. They will absolutely
Yeah.
belittle,
Bully.
deride. My first title for the book, which I didn't get to use, I wanted to call the book
Mhm.
Pussy Whipped. Because isn't it fascinating that the worst thing that one man can say to another man is, you're
Yeah.
afraid of women. You let women control you. Like, really? That's the biggest sin for a man, is to be afraid of
Yeah.
a woman.
Now you said that females seem more, I mean, what I'm getting from what you're saying is they're more comfortable with who they are at a younger age. Do you think that's because I mean, I've always gotten the impression that girls mature faster than boys. That was always my impression, and the reason I go back to that is in high school, I always knew girls who dated older guys, but I didn't know a lot of guys that dated older girls. So I always thought it was a maturity thing. It's like some of the girls in my grade, maybe it was just me, they didn't like me, but they would tend to date guys that were above our grade. And so do you think that has to do with why girls are more comfortable with who they are at a younger age? It's that maturing, or is that just something that I'm imagining here?
I don't think you're imagining things. It's true that girls do mature in a
Mhm.
lot of ways sooner than boys do, but I don't think that's what causes what we're talking about. I think what causes what we're talking about is that femininity in our culture is innate. You're born female, you're female. We don't really have a set of criteria for what masculine is. We only define it oppositionally. We think of masculine as not feminine. So to be feminine, you do feminine things. To be masculine, you don't do
Right.
feminine things. And so you're always at risk of being seen as not masculine because you might cry or you might whatever,
Yeah.
you might get tired and think you have to rest or whatever it is that could be seen by others as feminine, then you're no longer masculine.
Do you think that's a cultural influence? Because I mean, I think there's definitely traits that are more masculine. I mean, we pointed some out earlier, just in younger ages, the rambunctious aspect. I think of the hunter gatherers, that whole like primitive sort of environment that we had, where the men supposedly went out to hunt, the women sort of tended to the family. Do you think that's a social construct that we've created around women?
You've said the exact right word. It is a social construct. So if you've ever watched, if you have young kids or you've watched young kids, if you watch kids sports, you can see this so clearly. When a little girl, if it's a soccer game with boys and girls, a little girl falls down and gets hurt. First thing she does, she looks to the sideline to see mommy and daddy. And they cue her how to behave. And if it's a girl, the chances are they're going to be, oh, are you okay? You want to take a water break, honey? Is everything okay? Same little boy falls down, looks to the sideline for cues, and what does he get? Get up, get back in the game, go ahead. The parents are not thinking about this as gender socialization. It's just that's the men are doing it because that's what they heard when they were a kid, and the moms are doing it because. So yeah, it starts. We have data that infants as young as 6 months old, the parents respond to them differently based on their gender. Actually, it was 4 months. 4 months old, little babies.
Now, do you agree with that? Do you think we're doing something wrong in socializing our kids at those ages?
I do, but maybe for a little different reason than you're thinking. It's not. It's. I think anything that you do that tells somebody the kind of person they should be is unhealthy. So I think if you say to a kid, don't eat that, you don't like that, that's the same problem.
Mhm.
If you say to a kid, it's late, you're tired, maybe you're tired, maybe you're not. I think so. Anything we do that gets people to override figuring out who they are and tells them who they should be
Mhm.
creates problems, whether it's gender or anything else.
But don't you think people need that at a young age? I mean, the whole just raising kids and
Why?
trying to teach
What's
them.
the benefit?
Well, because they'll get run of the house, and my 10-year-old will stay up till 11, 12 at night, and he'll be exhausted the next morning. So I have to tell him, hey, dude, time to go to bed. You got school in the morning.
That's not telling him he's tired. That's telling him
Okay.
it's bedtime, you have to go to bed.
Okay.
That's the limit. That's different than saying, like the female version of this, which has, gotten a lot of press, is body shaming.
Hmm.
It's telling young girls, here's what you should look like.
Hmm.
Well, not everybody's body looks like that.
Yeah.
And you can't make your body look like what it doesn't look like. And so when we create an image for young girls of what their body should look like, we create shame. When we create an image for young men of what men should be like, that in some ways they'll be fit that, and some ways they won't, we create. Did I tell you the story last time about the kid in the class and the teacher inviting them to sing? Your favorite song?
I don't know if you did. Tell the story again.
So there's a really brilliant woman. Her name is Dr. Judy Chu. She's a California congresswoman. She's a psychologist and a congresswoman.
Mhm.
She spent 3 years hanging out in a preschool with boys to try to understand what goes on, not only with individual boys, but what makes them tick.
Mhm.
So she tells this story, which is heartbreaking. And anyone who has a boy is going to have their heart broken here at this story. The end of the school year, the teacher says every kid gets to lead the class in their favorite song that we learned this year. Little boy stands up and he starts singing a lullaby. The other boys sitting in the class immediately start mocking him, making fun of him, teasing him. It's a 5-year-old boy.
Right.
He stops singing. He says, I was just kidding. My favorite song. And he starts singing the Marine Corps anthem. So that wasn't his favorite song. His favorite song was the lullaby. But he learned a very harsh lesson in life not to be like that. Not to let people know you're like that. Because if you do, you'll be shamed. So it doesn't matter to me what his favorite song is. Why would it matter to anybody what his favorite song is? Who cares what music you like?
Right.
But he's getting a very clear message. Do not feel the way you feel, or certainly do not. This is why the number one cause of death among gay teenagers is suicide. You believe that?
Hmm.
The number one cause of death in gay kids is suicide because they randomly get messages from people unexpectedly. You're not okay the way you are.
Mhm.
You shouldn't be the way you are. You should be something that you're not.
Right. So those social pressures just have this snowball effect. And the more of those we experience at a young age, next thing you know, men like you are writing books about it.
Well,
Right.
or we talked briefly beforehand. I'm sure a lot of your listeners are watching the Netflix show Adolescence, which is an unbelievable show. And I don't want to give away too much, but it's about the peer pressure on this little, that show starts with these little pictures of this boy when he's just this sweet little, altar boy kind of shots. And the peer pressure on him from other boys and from other kids his age is destroys him. It's this show has people all across the country talking about passing laws about not letting kids under 16 have cell phones because we don't know what's on those kids' phones. We don't know the kind of bullying and pressure and shame that these kids are subjected to. And it's, particularly since COVID, when they weren't together in person to balance that where it was only social media, these kids are not doing well. And particularly boys are not doing well.
Yeah. I think I'm glad I grew up in a time when I did. And I don't know if you feel the same way, but I think that growing up with all the electronics that we have, and I've talked about this in the past, having a phone and access to social media, I just think it can be very destructive for young people, you know?
It is. I mean, as a kid, I hope this isn't too ribald, but I grew up in a suburb, New Jersey.
Yeah.
And we had a bus that went right through town into New York City,
Hmm.
right? So when you got old enough, you could ride the bus into New York
Hmm.
and see dirty magazines in Times Square.
Mm.
But you had to ride an hour and a half, but I mean, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
These kids,
Yep.
24/7, they're inundated with it. And, it was pretty intense for us.
Yep.
Um, Imagine what it's like for these kids, and it's just too
Yep.
much.
And I think a lot of those technological influences have affected adult relationships too. A lot has changed, as I said. You and I can remember a time where there was no online dating. I've never online dated in my life, actually, because I've been married long enough before that stuff really got mainstream. And do you think technology has created an environment where men can hide their weaknesses more easily? I was speaking to a good friend of mine, Drea Renee, recently. She's the host of a really, really good relationship podcast called Hey Babe, Can We Talk? Big shout out to Drea if you're listening.
And tell her to call me. I'll be happy to.
Yeah, sure, yeah. And she was telling me how today some guys meet girls online and they end up not even talking on the phone. Like guys will avoid talking and they'll only want to text. And it's like this online dating's created this virtual world where men can better hide themselves from women, and it probably is those fears you're talking about. Do you think
Absolutely.
that technology, social media, dating sites have made things more easy or more difficult?
Well, both. I think the reason that we have online dating is when I'm working with people in therapy who are reluctant to try online dating, I always ask the same question. How many new friends have you made in the last 3 years? And the answer is usually one, two. I'm like, how are you going to find somebody to date? If you've only met one or two people in the last 3 years, how are you going to find people to date? It's not going to happen.
Right.
You're not going to meet anyone
Yeah.
because we don't live lives that have much overlap in them anymore. We don't meet people we don't already know. And so I think the purpose of online dating is just to open the mouth of the funnel wider and to give
Yeah.
you a chance to meet people that you wouldn't ordinarily meet. The problem is that we don't use it well. So I always tell people you shouldn't be chatting with somebody online more than a few days before you meet. The online part is just to get to know somebody,
Hmm.
like a blind date, really. A friend says, "Oh, you should meet Jane. She's a really nice woman." Great, I'll be happy to have coffee and meet her. That's what online dating should be. Not like, layers and layers and layers of investigation and this, that. No, meet, get together, face to face, person to person, and then take it from there the way you would in any other. And if we just did that, I think it would be a much more positive experience for people.
Now, that's interesting. I mean, women have to approach these kinds of things with probably more caution than men do. So, do you think, I mean, how do you discern how much time people should speak online? I mean, women want to make sure they're not meeting
Yeah, but
somebody who's dangerous or predatory.
if you meet for coffee at Starbucks,
Yeah.
it's pretty minimal risk.
Yeah.
And so,
See how unplugged I am from online dating? I don't even think of things like that.
well, you meet in a public place. You don't go
Yeah.
to someone's house for a first date.
Right.
It's too much pressure.
Yeah.
And so you meet in a public place and you have a cup of coffee and you decide if you like. Actually, the perfect setup, which I always suggest to people, is meet at a bar that has a restaurant. Only have one drink. People drink too much on dates. One drink.
Yeah.
Have a drink. See how it's going. If you like each other and you want to spend more time together, just go order dinner. If you don't, say thanks for the nice to meet you. See you later. Have a nice life.
Yep.
It's sort of a no pressure setup.
Yep. Yep. No, that's smart. Do you think men have unrealistic expectations in relationships sometimes? And if so, what are some of these expectations that men might have?
I think you know the answer to that question. Yes, but because I'm 71, so I have a certain perspective on this. But when I see very rarely a television show about a couple my age in a loving relationship, I'm so excited. Oh, look, it's not teenagers. Look, it's not college co-eds. Like
Yep.
people stop loving each other when they get to 30 or something, right? Or we're not interested in them loving each other. So we saddle men with these crazy unrealistic, like what a woman should look like. I'll never forget, my roommate in graduate school told me that he was fixated on women's forearms. So it's 50 years ago, and I can't forget it. I can't get this out of my forearms. I don't even know what the difference between what does that forearm look like? But I would walk through campus with him, and he would point out to me women. So,
Really?
and I would say, so how's that going to impact the rest? Let's say you get married.
Yeah.
How's her having nice forearms going to help?
Yeah.
I don't understand what that's got to do with it. So people are interested in the most bizarre kinds of things, and they don't really know what to look for.
What do you think men most struggle with when it comes to maintaining a relationship? They get into a relationship, they meet a woman, they start dating, or maybe even we're speaking to that, about that married person. What is the struggle with maintaining it, do you think?
That's a great question. Um, Developmentally, boys and girls play in mixed play groups when they're little. And then they tend to separate into same-sex play groups. Girls play with girls, boys play with boys. Girls practice relationship skills. They play fantasy games school, house, teacher, they're all about relationships. They are learning how to be in relationships. We play games about competition and aggression. We're getting prepared to run the world, right? Which is great at work, gives us a leg up at work. Right? When women enter the work world, they're sometimes not prepared for the competition and aggression in it. We have the same disadvantage when we enter the world of intimate relationships. We haven't been practicing. We don't have much experience. And so we're at a disadvantage. And then that's a fork in the road. So men who are happy get to that fork in the road and they say, oh, I could have a lot happier life if I learned more about closeness and intimacy. She knows a lot about it. I could learn from her. That makes a great marriage. But it requires some humility, right? Men who are miserable get to that fork in the road and they say, you're not the boss of me. I'm not going to let you run my life. No woman's going to be. And they're either single or they're partnered and miserable. And so it's, do you have the humility and the good sense to say, there's something really important here that I kind of didn't learn about in my life, and here's a chance to learn about it. Lucky me.
Where do you think men get that pride when they don't want to pivot when they hit that fork in the road?
If you go back to your high school yearbook and you look at the picture of the person picked most likely to succeed, I doubt if it was somebody who was good at intimate relationships. I think it was somebody that everybody thought was going to succeed in work, going to succeed in some competitive, aggressive field. That's the message to men: is that here's your value. Your value is in what you produce, not who you are. And it leaves us sort of ill-equipped for intimate relationships. Now, there are many men who are obviously involved in beautiful, wonderful, healthy, intimate relationships. They probably learned about that from a woman someplace.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I even think back, I mean, I don't know if I got it from either, but just knowing the nature of my, not to throw my parents under the bus, but I had a different kind of upbringing. I think I had immigrant parents that dealt with a lot of
Yeah,
traumas from where they
yeah,
came from, and so a lot of stuff I kind of had to learn outside of the house, unfortunately. But I would think that the mom is going to teach that more than the dad. The dad is traditionally not, at least in the time when I was
yeah.
growing up. I don't know if we've evolved some since that time, because I know a lot of men now in my social circles that I think are very good at that, to
That's
be
what I'm saying.
honest.
But I think women teach it to
Yeah,
their daughters. I don't think they so much teach it to their sons. Yeah.
really. Why do you think that is?
I think because it's not, we don't think of that as something that boys need to learn. We, we, we want the dads to teach the boys how to succeed in the world, and we want the moms to teach the girls how to be in relationships. And it doesn't really occur to us that the boys need to learn how to be in relationships too.
Yeah, interesting.
Look, you ask survey people about are they happy, and if so, there's the Harvard's done the world's largest longitudinal study it's like over 80. They've been following the same people for like 80 years. Keep
Hmm.
asking them. They follow up with them like every year or two. How are you doing? Are you happy? And the ones who say they're happy, why? Because I'm loved. Because I have people I love and people who love me. They don't say I made $1 million this year. They don't say I got
Yeah,
a promotion. They say I love my kids love me. I love my wife loves me. But we don't start that way. We don't teach people, by the way, the key to a happy life, not all this other stuff. It's really about who is in your life that you love.
yeah. And think of those deathbed testimonies that people have too. We always hear about that, right?
Nobody's
Nobody's ever dying wishing they worked more or started more companies or whatever it is. It's always the relationship, the love that they had in their lives that gave it meaning, right?
Yeah, I mean, every year, how many people watch what's the movie where what's not a different life, a better life. What is the you know
It's a Wonderful
wonderful
Life.
life? It's a wonderful.
Yeah, right,
Well,
right.
that's the whole moral, right? That's the whole moral
Yep.
of the story is you thought your life was a failure because you didn't get to the top of the mountain. but you are
Yeah.
beloved.
Yeah.
And we love that movie. You know, we want to watch it every
Yeah.
year to remind ourselves, yeah, what am I doing? What, you
Yeah. That movie impacted me as a kid at a young age. Like that was such an eye-opening movie as to what life really means, you know. I that that movie influenced me in ways that not a lot of movies have.
and think about how old the movie is. So people were
Yeah.
wrestling with this stuff at least 50 years ago. People were having the same struggles.
Yeah. Pretty fascinating. I want to speak to the women for a second
Yeah,
here.
sure.
So, to the woman who's listening, they feel like their partner shuts down during arguments or avoids conflict. What advice do you give to the woman who's trying to better communicate with her man?
Sure. Um, First of all, interesting to me, I can look at on people who view my work on Psychology Today, I can look at it by gender. Slightly more
Mhm.
women read my work than men, which I
Is that
is
right?
really interesting. And I think the reason is if you go to a bookstore, you will find a very large section of the bookstore written for women, by women, about how to understand men. I think it's one of the things that drives women crazy is that they don't understand us because we're so opaque to them, because we're not very open and forthcoming. So women are really, really interested in understanding men. So the reason I think more women read my work is if I say to a man, you know, I think men are afraid of women. I get maybe about a 30-second pushback and then instantly a look of recognition. That look on your face right now. That's the look I get. Right? And I'm telling you, 100% of straight men I've had this conversation with, which is hundreds or thousands, get what I'm
Mhm.
talking about within 60 seconds. Women think I've lost my mind and I should be institutionalized. It seems impossible to them that men are afraid of women because we don't seem like we're afraid. So once
Yeah.
women understand that all of men's bad behavior is coming out of fear, it is life changing because it allows them to move from a position of irritation and frustration and aggravation to a position of empathy. Like, oh, he's not being a jerk. He's not trying to
Mhm.
mess with me. He's not withdrawing and doesn't care about me. Actually, I'm going to read you a quote if I may.
Sure.
This is a woman who I did a really interesting workshop. It was an unusual format. We had a 3-day workshop, and then we met again 4 months later for 3 days, right? So they all had time to go back to their relationships and kind of put this stuff in practice. The women overwhelmingly reported more significant change in the relationship from the first 3 days than the men did. And this is what one of these women said. I understand that my husband has not been ignoring, dismissing, or hurting me out of a lack of respect, as I suspected, but that he's scared. Scared to hurt me, scared to mess up with me, scared to not be enough. I had honestly never imagined that he was scared and that I was so profoundly important to him that he was constantly terrified I would leave him. So she's really done a 180. She's gone from thinking that he's not interested in her to realizing that his behavior is a reflection of how hugely attacked and in. That is transforming. That really changes relationships. And then when women move to more empathy, they back up a little bit. They're less critical, which gives men an invitation to be more forthcoming. And so for women, their insight is rewarded with exactly what they've wanted all along.
It's amazing how limiting fear is to to make progress in one's life. No matter it's not even relationships, but just fear is so debilitating and unhealthy, and you know it affects us physiologically, biologically. It's not a healthy mindset to live in. So I'm not surprised to hear this, and it's just fascinating what attacking that fear and learning to overcome it, how freeing one can be in their lives, you know.
I mean, you're absolutely right, and you could say, you know, the process of therapy or the process of becoming happier in life is learning how to uh, live with your fears.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we all,
So much. So much anxiety in the world today too. I feel like anxiousness is at an all-time high. There's so many people, um, you know, trying to medicate it away, and I'm not judging or criticizing people, but it just feels like it's greater in number than 20 years ago.
It's because we're not connected with each other. The antidote to anxiety is connection, and we are much less connected with each other. And so
Yeah.
when I work with men, I always ask, do you have friends? And they always say, yeah, of course I got buddies. And I say, well,
Hmm.
no, no. I mean friends that you talk with the way you're talking with me. And they're like, oh, God, no, I don't talk with men. So
Yeah.
most men don't have friends. The only
Yeah.
person they talk to is their wife, if they talk to her. And that creates anxiety because
Yep.
anxiety is mediated by you're anxious that you're not a loving dad.
Yeah.
How do you get over their anxiety? People who know you well say, I see you with your kids all the time. You're an amazing dad.
Yeah.
If you don't have anybody who knows you well enough to tell you that, then you just, anxiety is just going to cycle and cycle and cycle.
Yeah, we're social creatures. We weren't designed to be on our own little
No,
islands,
not at
you
all.
know?
Not at all.
What advice, Avram, do you have for people who are entering a new relationship after a bad breakup or a divorce? Clearly, they're going to have some baggage, some trauma. Hopefully, they take some time to reflect and kind of get over some of the struggles that happen after a bad breakup. But what would you tell them to be mindful of entering into a new relationship after that?
I like that. Um, there's a lot, I would say. One thing I would say is don't move forward proactively, not reactively. Don't say, "Oh, my ex-wife was angry, so I need to find somebody who's not angry." Don't like look for the person who's not your ex. Look for the person who's more like the person you think you would do well with. And then the biggest thing I think that people misunderstand is that they look outside themselves judging the characteristics of the other person instead of looking inside themselves to see how it's going. So when I'm talking with people who are in a new relationship, I don't say, does he have a good job? Is he handsome? Do you like his mother? I say, how do you feel when you're with him? How do you feel about yourself? Do you feel good about yourself? Do you feel happy? Do you feel relaxed and free to be yourself? That's a keeper.
Hmm. Um, what are some challenges men face in relationships when they go through different phases in their lives? Career changes, fatherhood. What are some different things that they could face in those times? Things change, mindsets change, attitudes change. How do they navigate that? We're talking about men here.
So let's talk about the two you mentioned because those are two big ones,
Yeah.
fatherhood and as you age, which I could actually say something about.
Hmm.
So fatherhood is getting easier because men are more open about being interested in being fathers and they're talking with each other more. So when I had young kids, there was a popular joke. And the joke was, what do you call a dad in a park on a Saturday with his kids? Divorced. Because I'm telling you,
Yeah.
40 years ago, I remember bursting into tears the first time I saw a changing table in the McDonald's. Because I've been changing my kids' dirty diapers on nasty bathroom sinks
Yep.
for years because nobody thought that a man would ever change a damn diaper.
Interesting.
So I literally burst into tears when I saw a changing table. I thought, oh my God, the world is really changing. So my son has a whole group of male friends who are dads. And being a dad is a really, so I had to do it alone and figure it out by myself.
Hmm.
I fortunately found a group of men and we formed a fathers group and we got together once a month and talked about what it's like to be a dad.
Yeah.
My dad didn't have anything to say to me about that. Where
Yeah.
was I going to learn that? Except from other men. So again, the answer is connection. You need to
Hmm.
be in community with other men talking about all the feelings that come up as you become a father.
Hmm.
So the second one you brought up was aging. And that's my phase of life right now.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if it's going to be a book or not, but what I'm interested in currently, and may be a book, is a book that will be tentatively titled Boys Just Want to Have Fun. And it's a book about how hard it is for men to play and have strong feelings and not base their self-worth on being productive. So I moved 5 years ago to a small island in Maine.
Hmm.
I cut my work back by 2/3. And I thought, piece of cake. I know how to relax. Well, I had such a hard time not judging myself based on what I produced or achieved every day
Why? Because you were doing less?
because I was doing less. And I have a lifetime of judging myself on how successful I am. How many books did I sell? How much money did I make? Who did I help? What?
Hmm.
Now I get to the end of the day and I judge the day based on how much I enjoyed myself. I still work, but it was an incredibly difficult to love myself for being alive,
Yeah.
for having a good day,
So
not for what I accomplished.
what got you over it? How did you overcome it?
It took me years, and I did a very simple thing, which I highly recommend to people. I go for a walk every morning.
Hmm.
And on my walk, I ask myself a very simple question. What would you like to do today? And I'll tell you, it takes at least 30 minutes to figure out the answer to that question. Because all the stuff that comes to your mind is the stuff you're supposed to do.
Like
Oh,
work?
I should clean out the garage, right? Oh, do.
Yeah.
You have to sift through all that stuff to get to what you really want to do that day, which might be cleaning out the garage, but
Yeah.
it might not be. And then at the end, then the next day or the end of the day, I'm like, well, how generous was I with myself today? I said that the thing I wanted to do most was watch the last show of the episode of the show I've been watching, and I didn't do that. Why? If that was what I most wanted to do, why didn't I do that? Not in a critical way, not in like hold myself accountable, but just in a, what, you just wasted a day. You didn't do a single thing in that day you wanted to do. What a waste.
Yeah. And that's a guy thing. I mean, I've been self-employed for a long time, and so, the hustle is up to me. And I have to get things done. And when I choose to take it easy sometimes, which I don't do enough of, there is some guilt that creeps in. And I don't think that's healthy. And I don't know if that's the same thing you wrestle with.
That is learned. I tell you, the people who are genius about this are observant Jews because, and my son keeps Sabbath.
Okay.
So when I go visit him, when the sun goes down Friday night, till the sun comes up, till the sun goes down Saturday night, you don't work. You don't work. You don't talk about work. You don't think about work. You just hang out with your family. It is a life changing. And so very few people are willing to do 24 hours, but I suggest that people take 2 hours
Yeah.
on a Saturday, Sunday, doesn't matter what, but carve out 2 hours in a week. Start with 2 hours, but of course, if you do it for two, you're going to want to do it for four.
Of course.
It's amazing. It's an amazing experience to wake up in the morning and not be thinking about what you should do today.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't have anything to do today.
Yeah. That's what a reminder vacations are.
Yeah.
I don't take enough of them, but just that mindset when you're on a vacation, just that clean slate. The what do you want to do today? But it's all fun stuff. Well, where are we going today? Where are we going to the
Bring it
beach?
into your regular life, not just 2 weeks a
Yeah,
year,
right.
but make it a part of like I have a hot tub.
Uh,
I end every day, well, not in the summer, but the rest of the year. So in Maine, that's 9 months a year.
yeah,
I end every day with physical pleasure. I get in the hot tub, right? So I will not go to sleep unless I have done something for myself in a day. I refuse to let the sun set on a day that I haven't done something for me. It might just be the hot tub,
yeah,
but how many days of my life did I do nothing for me?
yeah,
Did I take care of other people? Did I work? And all those are good things. I'm not saying they're not good things, but in some measure, some balance. Like really, a whole day went by and you didn't even have the sandwich. You know, it's like you ate some crappy meal you didn't want to eat. You didn't want to like take 5 minutes and walk to the deli and get a good sandwich. Like, come on.
Yeah. Do you think, I want to pivot back to something here. Do you think men fear losing their identity when they're entering a long-term relationship or they're on the
Yes.
path to get married? And
Yes.
how do they retain that sense of self? And why do you
Yeah.
think that happens?
So in the book, I have 7 fears that men have of women, and I think the first one is men's fear of being dominated and controlled,
Mhm.
and that's where the whole pussy whip thing comes in.
Right.
So men are taught that um, that intimate relationships are good for women and not for men. That you know we that women are trying to get something from you. They're trying to control you,
Yeah.
and if you let yourself get into an intimate relationship, you'll lose something. But interestingly, all the data says the opposite. So partnered men are happier, healthier, and wealthier than single men. They're happier, they earn more, and they're healthier. They live longer than single men. So we have this nonsense in our heads about that we're gonna lose our autonomy. It's not true. The opposite is true. When you know this is true because when couples break up, when heterosexual couples break up, who dates faster? Men, always. Men jump right out again. They can't. So if men don't need women, how come they're so fast to
Yeah.
again?
Yeah. Do you think that sense of autonomy is problematic? Like, do you think that a woman should nurture some of the autonomy of a man when she is committed to him, when she's in a relationship with him? Or do you think that's something men need to learn to just do away with? Is it unhealthy?
Let's change the language because I don't think you're really talking about autonomy. I think you're talking about something a little different.
Okay.
So if you love someone, you love them for who they are.
Right.
If you keep trying to make someone into who you think they should be, you don't that's not love.
Hmm.
So of course a woman should support all aspects of who their partner is, just as a man should support all aspects of so my wife right now is considering a job change.
Mhm.
That is going to have an impact on me. That's not what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about her.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about her happiness. How's her day going to go? How's it going to be for her? That's selfish.
Yeah.
That's my best interest. I've lived with her when she wasn't happy in her work. It wasn't fun.
Right.
I lived with her when she was happy in her work. So I'm invested in her happiness. So in your question, of course a woman should be invested in a man's happiness for selfish reasons.
Yeah. That is a key to a successful relationship. And
Absolutely.
I'm a practicing Christian myself, and there's a New Testament passage in Philippians that where the apostle Paul illustrates be more concerned with the well-being of others than yourself. And I think when you
Yes.
do that in a relationship, I think it's groundbreaking and it can be life-changing.
You remember your first question?
I had a lot of them.
What was the first thing you suggest men
Yep.
do? And I said, listen.
Yep.
I said, try for an hour, talking half as much as you listen.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's something we just don't do. It's a guy thing.
Well, we're not taught how.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to be fair to men and say it's not some innate absence or defect in us. I do therapy groups with men, and the shock to me was, I remember the moment I stood outside the room as I'm getting ready to go to my first group with all men, and I thought, Avrum, this is the worst idea you have ever had in your entire life. This is going to be
Mhm.
awful. They're not going to do therapy. They're going to talk about work. To my surprise, to my really pleasant surprise, the men in my groups are more open and vulnerable with each
Mhm.
other than the men in the mixed groups. The men in my groups look each other in the eye and talk about, I love you. I care about you. You're important. I've never seen men behave this way with each other.
Yeah.
There's no women around.
Yeah. Isn't that something?
And they're scared.
Yeah. That's fascinating.
It's been so wonderful to see the way these men are with each other. And they've gone a lifetime of wanting to be able to talk intimately to another man and not knowing how or where to, and then you put them in a setting where that's the culture, where we talk openly with each
Yeah.
other, they love it.
I wish there were more avenues just in society for people to learn these things at a young age and not have to learn on the tail end of a marriage or embarking on you know, a divorce or some serious life change that set them
Yeah.
back, you
Well,
know?
this is the great debate.
Yeah.
You know, we have all these things. So I worked for a period of time in the prison system, which is about as dramatic example as you're ever going to get of what happens when kids don't learn life
Yeah.
skills
Yeah.
growing
Yeah.
up. So the question is, do we, some people would say, and I don't really think there's a right answer, I don't think we've figured it out. Some people would say, that's not the school's job, that's the family's
Mhm.
job. But what if you come from a screwed up
Yeah.
family? You know, then we as a society have to pay for the learning that didn't happen in those families. But other people are very nervous about public institutions, and we haven't figured that out
Right.
yet. We haven't figured out about what to do. So my personal, it's a little controversial, and I'm really tongue in cheek. You have to apply for a license to have children. And
How about that?
if you pass the exam, then the
Yep.
state pays for everything.
Yep.
Therapy, education, health care, because we said you're capable.
Yep.
If you want to have a kid on your own without a license, you pay for everything. Kid robs the liquor store, you pay for it. So that's my answer. I
You
bet,
know,
I
that's
bet you get some messages on that one.
probably. I mean, that's plausible. I got to get a license to go fishing in my
I
state,
know.
right? I mean, that's not a bad idea, Avram. Maybe a license or a permit. I don't think you're off base here.
We've got to figure out what we're going to do about the dysfunction that happens to kids. You know, Freud's original idea was he created psychoanalysis to be used with kids. He didn't think about it for use with adults because he said, you're working with adults, then they're already screwed up. He said the way to do this, the way to change the world is to help kids.
Avram, this has been a very insightful conversation. I knew it would be because it was great the last time you were here, and I want to thank you for being here again.
Absolutely.
How can people get more familiar with who you are and the work that you're doing?
They can go to my website, which is avrumweissphd.com, and you can sign up on my mailing list. And there's say two things about that. First of all, you'll get a free ebook about relationships if you sign up.
Mhm.
But second of all, I always return email messages. It's a big deal for me. When people don't respond to my emails, I'm just not happy. I think it's rude. It's like not returning a phone call. So if you email me with something you want to talk to me about, I will respond to your email. So if it's a question about the book or whatever it is, so you can join the mailing list. I write pretty regularly for Psychology Today. You can also find all of my past articles on Psychology Today there. My other books are there. That's the best way to reach me.
Okay, I'll make sure to include that in the show notes. And I can attest to that. Avram's really good at responding to emails. I know this personally. So he's telling you the truth.
Nothing else to do.
Oh, come on. And on a beautiful island in Maine, I'm sure you can think of something, Avram.
I just came back from a month on a sailboat in the Bahamas. I got lots to do.
There you go. Well, thanks for being here. And I'd love to have you back again.
My pleasure. I enjoyed talking with you.
Well, that'll do it for this edition. And we want to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. What has been your key to success in relationships? What has been your secret? Leave us a comment. We always want to hear from you. You guys are part of our community. And always check out the latest at mikecpodcast.com. Until next time, bye, everybody.